Okay, so the title of your notes is going to be Section 4.18, One-Step Equations. One-Step Equations. Section 4.18, One-Step Equations on addition and subtraction. So one-step equations, this is a really cool section. You'll see why. What you need to know is what is isolate. We are going to be isolating today. So to isolate just means to get something by itself. By itself. To isolate means to get by itself. So for example, when we look at something like this, x plus 7 equals 0, what we want to try to do is isolate this variable. Try to get this variable by itself. So on your equation, an equation has an equal sign. Equations equal. Right? Makes sense there. What we do is we just subtract 7 from one side and we subtract 7 from the other side. So that crosses off and you get x equals -7. That is what it means to isolate. Now you also need to know what an inverse is. An inverse is the opposite of something. The opposite of something. All right, so you're trying to find the opposite of something. The opposite of your feet would be your hands. Opposite of your hands would be your feet. On there, just like in math, we look at, for example, the addition inverse. The addition inverse is subtraction. And same thing goes for multiplication. Multiplication's inverse is division. They undo each other. So we also, of course, we always need to know what a variable is. So a variable is a letter that represents a number, such as x, g, y, and r. X, g, y, and r. Those are all variables. These can all represent a number. So when we look at this today, when we look at isolating, for example, just go and write 8 equals 8 plus 1. So our goal today is to isolate this variable right here, x. So what we do is we just rewrite it. X plus 1 equals 8. And what we need to do is we need to subtract, use the inverse of addition. We just use subtraction, and whatever we do to one side must do to the other. So 8 minus 1, that gives you 7, and x equals 7. That's it. So there are 3 simple steps to solve one-step equations. One-step equations. 1SEs. 1SEs. Steps to solve 1SEs. One-step equations. Step 1 is to circle variable to get by itself. To get by itself. So circle the variable, just like what we did here. We have to get that by itself. Step 2 is use inverse to balance. Use the inverse to balance. So the inverse of addition is subtraction. So we just use our subtraction to balance the equation. And of course, step 3 is find value. Find value of variable. That's it. So circle variable to get by itself. So we're working on getting that x by itself. Use the inverse to balance. We have to balance the equation. So we use the opposite of addition. That's subtraction. Minus 1, what you do to one side, you must do to the other. 8 minus 1 is 7. That's it. Let's see what this looks like. Number one is b plus 9 equals 15. B plus 9 equals 15. All right, and these are really cool just because it's fun to balance. You're trying to balance this equation. So just go ahead and rewrite it. B plus 9 equals 15. and circle that variable. That is the one we're trying to get by itself. All right. Step 2 is use the inverse to balance. So what is the inverse of addition? Well, that's subtraction, so just subtract 9 from one side. And what you do to one side, you must do to the other. So this, your positive 9 and negative 9, that cancels out. And you're only left with b and an equal sign. And 15 minus 9, that gives you 6. b equals 6. It is now balanced. That's it. Let's see another one. Number 2 is t minus 6 equals 28. Boy, a glass of tea sure sounds pretty good. Thirsty on there. All right, so what do you do first? Well, we just rewrite it. T minus 6 equals 28. Some sweet tea sounds pretty good. All right, and remember, you're trying to get this variable by itself. So circle that variable. And then step 2, use the inverse. What's the inverse of subtraction? That's addition. So just add 6, and what you do to one side, you must do to the other. Good. Your 6's cancel out, so you can cross those out. Now you're just left with t equals, and then what is 28 plus 6? Well, that's easy. 28 plus 6 is 34. T equals 34. That's it. Let's see another one. Number 3 is z plus 15 equals 22. All right, so step 1 is just to, rewrite that equation. Rewrite the equation and circle that variable. So we're going to circle z. Circle z. We're trying to get that by itself. And the reason why we're using one line per step is so you can see what we're doing each step of the way. Step 2 is, what's the inverse of addition? Well, that's easy. That's subtraction. Subtract 15. Remember, trying to get this guy by itself. And whatever you do on one side, you must do to the other. So now you're just left with z equals, you just have to solve 22 minus 15. 22 minus 15 gives you 7. Z equals 7. That's it. That's it. So, when you're looking at this, pretty smooth as long as you are trying to keep that by itself, finding the inverse, solving to get your variable solution. Let's see another one. F minus 10 equals 1. F minus 10 equals 1. So first off, just go ahead and rewrite f minus 10 equals 1 and circle that variable. Circle that variable. You have to get that f by itself. How are you going to get f by itself? Well, using the inverse of subtraction, which is addition. Go ahead and plus 10 to one side, plus 10 to the other. Cross off what you have already canceled out. That cancels out. So now all that's left is f equals 1 plus 10. F equals 11. 11 is your answer. That's it. That's it. Let's see another one. Number 5 is 12 equals c plus 8. All right. So at this point, you probably know what to do. Just go ahead and rewrite it. C plus 8. And then circle that variable you are trying to isolate. Try to isolate the c. Isolate the C, like the Mediterranean Sea on there, only that's S-E-A, not C. And then the opposite, use the inverse of positive 8 would be to subtract 8. And whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. Good, so cross off what cancels out. Now you're just left with C equals 12 minus 8. Well, that's simple. That gives you 4. C equals 4. That's it. That's it. Let's see another one. Number 6 is E minus 12 equals 20. E minus 12 equals 20. All right, so by now you know that you just have to rewrite it. E minus 12 equals 20. All right, and circle that variable. Circle that variable. You have to get that E by itself. Using the inverse, what's the inverse of subtraction? Addition. Add 12. Add 12. And then cross off your 12s because those, of course, cancel out. A negative and a positive cancel. Now you're left with E equals 20 plus 12 is 32. 32 is your answer. E equals 32. So, when you're looking at, your one-step equations, looking at circling the variable, use the inverse, and find the value of the variable. Let's see, go ahead and try numbers 7 and 8 on your own. Number 7 is 37 equals y plus 8. Number 8 is 853 equals x minus 48. Skip a couple lines for number 9. Number 9 is h plus 2.5 equals 4 2/4. Number 10 is 6 2/10 equals a minus 3. And skip a couple lines for number 11. Number 11 is 4 1/3 equals w plus 1 1/3. Go and try number 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 on your own.